Captain Jack Mercer stood at the command center, staring at the holographic display of the planet Zeta 5, a pristine world that had eluded human discovery until now. The planet's surface, covered in lush green forests and vast blue oceans, was a sight that filled the entire crew with a mix of anticipation and caution. "Bring us into a stable orbit, Lieutenant," Jack ordered, his voice calm but commanding. "Already on it, Captain," replied Lieutenant Eric Hayes, his fingers dancing over the control panel. "We'll be in position in 2 minutes." "Dr. Grayson, how's the atmosphere reading?" Jack turned to the ship's chief scientist, a middle-aged man with a mind sharp as a blade. Dr. Owen Grayson glanced at his tablet, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Oxygen levels are well within human tolerance. Gravity is slightly higher than Earth's, but nothing we can't handle. Temperature's stable. We could set up camp here if we wanted to." "Let's focus on exploring first," Jack said, pacing back and forth. "Sergeant West, get the landing team prepped. I want boots on the ground as soon as possible." Sergeant Mark West, a towering man with a no-nonsense attitude, nodded and barked orders into his comms. Within minutes, the landing team was assembled, ready to descend to the planet's surface. Jack, Eric, Owen, and Mark boarded the shuttle, the atmosphere inside crackling with energy. As they strapped in, Eric turned to Jack. "You're coming down with us this time, Captain?" Jack smiled slightly. "I've been cooped up in that chair long enough. It's time I see something new." The shuttle detached from the Endeavour and began its descent through the atmosphere. The planet loomed larger in the viewport, the details of its surface becoming clearer. As they broke through the cloud layer, a large metallic structure became visible, nestled within a dense forest. "Captain, are you seeing this?" Eric's voice was tinged with disbelief. "Yeah, I see it," Jack replied, leaning forward. "That doesn't look like anything natural. Bring us in closer, Eric." The shuttle hovered above the clearing, the metallic structure dominating the landscape. It was massive, with smooth surfaces and strange symbols etched into its sides. Jack's mind raced as he considered the implications of what they were seeing. "Set us down," he ordered. The shuttle touched down gently, and the team disembarked, weapons ready, but not raised. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Jack motioned for them to move forward, leading the way toward the structure. As they approached, Owen's scanner beeped. "The material of this structure is unlike anything we've seen. It's alien, Captain." Jack nodded, though he had already suspected as much. "Let's find a way inside." Mark, ever vigilant, scanned the perimeter with his rifle at the ready. "No sign of movement, but I don't like this, Captain. It's too quiet." "We're not here to pick a fight," Jack reminded him. "Stay alert, but keep calm." Owen's scanner pinpointed what appeared to be a doorway, hidden within the intricate designs on the structure. "Here," he said, tapping a sequence on his device. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a dark corridor that stretched into the depths of the building. "Well, that's inviting," Eric muttered. "Only one way to find out what's inside," Jack said, stepping forward. "Let's move." The team entered the structure, the interior illuminated by dim lights that flickered on as they advanced. The air was cool, almost sterile, and the walls were lined with more of the strange symbols, their meaning a mystery. As they walked, Owen ran his scanner along the walls. "The technology here is centuries ahead of anything we've got. Whoever built this is advanced, and they've been here for a long time." "Let's hope they're friendly," Mark grumbled. They reached a large chamber, its ceiling disappearing into the darkness above. In the center of the room was a circular platform, glowing with an eerie blue light. Before anyone could react, the platform began to hum, and a figure slowly materialized in the center. It was humanoid, but distinctly alien, with blue skin that shimmered in the low light and eyes that glowed softly. The figure was tall and elegant, its movements fluid as it stepped off the platform and approached them. "Welcome, travelers," the figure said, its voice melodic and clear. "I am Ilara, representative of the Thalassans. We have been expecting you." Jack stepped forward, trying to hide his surprise. "I'm Captain Jack Mercer of the Endeavour. We didn't know this planet was inhabited." Ilara smiled, a gesture that put the crew somewhat at ease. "We are not of this world, but we have made it our home. We have been observing your kind for some time. Your arrival is both unexpected and intriguing." "Observing us?" Eric interjected. "For how long?" Ilara tilted her head slightly. "Long enough to understand your language, your culture, and your biology. We are curious about your species, just as you are about ours." Jack exchanged glances with his team. This was uncharted territory, first contact with an intelligent alien race, and it was going remarkably smoothly. "What do you want from us?" Mark asked, suspicion evident in his tone. "Only to learn," Alara replied, her eyes locking onto Jack's. "We wish to understand you better. In return, we are willing to share knowledge that could benefit your people." Owen stepped forward, his scientific curiosity piqued. "Your technology, it's far beyond anything we've encountered. What can you tell us about it?" Alara's expression softened, and she gestured for them to follow. "Come, there is much to discuss. I will show you what we have achieved, and you can show me what makes your species unique." The team followed Alara deeper into the structure, their initial apprehension giving way to a mix of curiosity and cautious optimism. As they walked, the walls around them shifted, revealing intricate machinery and displays that seemed to come to life in response to their presence. "Your kind is fascinating," Alara said as they entered another chamber filled with what appeared to be holographic displays of various star systems. "Your drive to explore, to expand beyond your homeworld, it's something we Thalassans have admired from afar." "We've always sought to understand the universe," Jack replied, "but we've never encountered another species like yours." "And we have never encountered a species quite like yours," Alara said, turning to face him directly. "Your biology is complex, intriguing even. Perhaps you could enlighten me about a particular aspect that has puzzled our scientists." Jack raised an eyebrow. "And what aspect would that be?" Alara's gaze remained steady, though a hint of curiosity flickered in her eyes. "Your reproduction. It seems inefficient compared to our methods." Jack blinked, caught off guard by the directness of her question. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Thalassans have advanced far beyond the need for biological reproduction," Alara explained. "Our offspring are created through a process that ensures genetic perfection. But your species relies on a more traditional method, one that is unpredictable and, frankly, quite vulnerable." Mark chuckled, unable to hide his amusement. "Welcome to being human." Alara tilted her head, her expression one of genuine curiosity. "Perhaps you could explain it to me, Captain. We are eager to learn." Jack exchanged a glance with Owen, who shrugged. "Well," Jack began, "it's a bit more complicated than that, but I suppose we could give you a basic understanding." As they discussed the intricacies of human reproduction, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger exchange of knowledge, and possibly something more. He was walking a fine line between diplomacy and discovery, and the stakes had never been higher. For now, though, he would take it one step at a time. Captain Jack Mercer stood on the surface of Zeta 5, trying to process the reality of what was happening. He was staring at an alien, an actual alien. Alara, the Thalassan representative, seemed as curious about them as they were about her. Her glowing blue skin and graceful movements made her look otherworldly, yet there was something inherently approachable in the way she carried herself. "Captain, this is incredible," Dr. Owen Grayson said, barely able to contain his excitement. "We've just made contact with an intelligent species. The implications for science, for humanity, it's beyond anything we've ever imagined." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Doc," Sergeant Mark West said, his voice laced with caution. "We're still in the unknown here." Jack nodded in agreement. "We need to take things slow, Owen. We've just met Alara, and we have no idea what their intentions are, but this could be a huge opportunity." Alara, who had been observing their exchange with a serene smile, finally spoke. "We Thalassans have been watching your species for a long time. Your drive to explore, your ability to adapt, it's fascinating. We have much to learn from each other." "Likewise," Jack replied. "We've been searching the stars for signs of life, but we never expected to find a civilization like yours. What can you tell us about your people?" Alara led them through the structure, which seemed to come alive as they moved. The walls, once smooth and cold, now glowed with soft, pulsating lights that guided their way. It was as if the building itself was aware of their presence. "Our civilization is very old," Alara began, her tone almost nostalgic. "We left our original homeworld long ago when it became unsustainable. Zeta 5 has been our refuge, a place where we've thrived for generations. Our technology has allowed us to adapt and flourish, but we are always searching for ways to improve." As they walked, the walls shifted again, revealing holographic images of star systems, planets, and Thalassan history. The team was captivated, especially Dr. Grayson, who was already recording everything he could. This is incredible, Owen whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Their level of advancement, it's beyond anything we could have imagined. Jack kept his focus on Alara. You mentioned earlier that you've studied us. How much do you know about humans? Alara's smile returned. Quite a bit, Captain. We have observed your people's struggles, your triumphs, and your culture. However, there are still aspects of your species that elude our understanding. And what might those be? Jack asked. His curiosity piqued. Alara paused and turned to face him, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. Your reproductive process, for one. It is primitive by our standards, yet it has allowed your species to spread and thrive. It is something we cannot fully comprehend. Sergeant West chuckled under his breath. Well, it's not exactly dinner conversation, but it gets the job done. Alara's expression remained serious, though there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. We Thalassans have moved beyond biological reproduction. Our offspring are engineered to be the best of us, free from the imperfections that come with natural birth. But your species relies on traditional methods. We are curious to know why you have not evolved beyond this. Jack exchanged a glance with Owen, who looked equally unsure of how to respond. It's not something we've exactly chosen to change, Jack said carefully. Our way of reproduction has been part of us since the beginning. It's tied to our emotions, our relationships. It's more than just a biological function. Alara seemed to ponder this for a moment. Fascinating. For us, reproduction is a purely intellectual pursuit, devoid of emotion. It is about ensuring the continuity of our species in the most efficient way possible. But for you, it seems to be tied to something deeper. That's one way to put it, Jack agreed, still trying to navigate the oddness of the conversation. For humans, reproduction is about connection, family, love, things that are hard to quantify. Alara nodded slowly. Love, a concept we have studied but do not experience as you do. It is intriguing how this emotion drives so much of your behavior. Drives us crazy sometimes too, Mark quipped, earning a small laugh from Eric. Perhaps, Alara continued, this is something we can learn from your people. An exchange of knowledge that benefits us both. Jack considered her words carefully. This was no ordinary exchange. They were talking about the very essence of what it meant to be human, compared to what it meant to be Thalassan. The implications were enormous. We're open to sharing what we know, Jack finally said. But this isn't something that can be understood in a few conversations. It's deeply ingrained in who we are. I understand, Alara replied, and we are willing to take the time to learn. In return, we can offer you insights into our own advancements, our technology, our way of life. Together, we can achieve much. Captain, Owen interjected, this could be the most significant collaboration in human history. Imagine what we could learn from them, about medicine, technology, even our own evolution. Jack nodded slowly. It's an opportunity we can't pass up. But we have to be careful. There's a lot we don't know about the Thalassans, and this is just the beginning. Alara seemed to sense his caution and stepped closer, her glowing eyes meeting his. You are wise to be cautious, Captain, but I assure you our intentions are peaceful. We have no desire for conflict. Jack held her gaze, searching for any sign of deceit. But all he saw was genuine curiosity, perhaps even a desire for understanding. Then let's take it one step at a time, he said. We'll start by sharing what we can, and see where it leads. Alara smiled, a gesture that seemed to brighten the room. I look forward to it, Captain Mercer. As the team continued their tour of the Thalassan structure, the initial tension began to ease. The conversation flowed more naturally, with Owen eagerly discussing scientific theories, Mark keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings, and Eric chiming in with his own observations. Jack remained focused, knowing that this was just the first step in what could be a long and complicated relationship. The Thalassans were offering knowledge that could change humanity's future, but the cost of that knowledge was still unknown. For now, they would take it one day at a time. There was no rush, only the promise of discovery and the hope that this encounter would lead to something greater than either species could imagine. As they exited the chamber and stepped back into the bright sunlight of Zeta 5, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, they weren't alone in the universe. The days following first contact with the Thalassans were a blur of activity aboard the Endeavour. Captain Jack Mercer and his crew had been granted permission to freely explore the Thalassan settlement, and in return, Alara and a select few of her people were given access to the Endeavor. The exchange of knowledge was swift and intense, but beneath the surface of cooperation, a growing unease began to take root. In the privacy of his quarters, Jack pored over the data they had collected so far. The Thalassans were undeniably advanced, centuries, perhaps even millennia, ahead of humanity in terms of technology and science. But there was something about their society that didn't sit right with him. It was too controlled, too perfect. Jack had seen enough in his time to know that perfection often hid darker truths. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Jack called, setting his tablet aside. Sergeant Mark West entered, his usual no-nonsense expression even grimmer than usual. "Captain, we need to talk." Jack gestured for him to take a seat. "What's on your mind, Mark?" Mark sat down, his broad shoulders tense. "I've been keeping an eye on the Thalassans, just like you asked, and there's something you need to know." Jack leaned forward, sensing the seriousness in Mark's tone. "Go on." "While you and Dr. Grayson were busy with Alara, I did some recon around their settlement. I found something disturbing." Mark paused, as if unsure how to proceed. "Spit it out, Sergeant," Jack urged. "I found what looks like a research facility," Mark said, his voice low. "And from what I could see, they're doing some kind of genetic experiments. But it's not just research. They're altering their own people." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Altering how?" "Bioengineering," Mark explained. "They're manipulating their own DNA, selecting only the traits they consider perfect, and getting rid of anything they don't like. I even saw what looked like storage units, cryogenic pods with what I assume are embryos." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The implications of Mark's discovery were staggering. "Why didn't you report this earlier?" "I wanted to be sure of what I was seeing," Mark replied. "I didn't want to jump to conclusions without proof. But Captain, this isn't just about making themselves stronger or smarter. It's about control. Absolute control over their species' evolution." Jack stood up, pacing the room as he processed the information. "If what you're saying is true, then the Thalassans aren't just advanced. They're dangerous. They've engineered themselves into something that's barely recognizable as a natural species." "Exactly," Mark said. "And if they're willing to do this to themselves, who's to say they won't try to do it to us? They might see our natural evolution as a threat, something to be corrected." Jack stopped pacing and turned to Mark. "We need more information. I want you to keep a close eye on that facility. See if you can get more details without getting caught. We can't make any accusations without solid evidence." Mark nodded, his expression serious. "Understood, Captain." "And Mark," Jack added, "be careful. We don't know how far they're willing to go to protect their secrets." As Mark left to carry out his orders, Jack sat back down and rubbed his temples. This was not what he had expected when they made contact with the Thalassans. The situation was becoming more complex and more dangerous by the minute. His thoughts were interrupted again by another knock at the door. This time it was Dr. Owen Grayson, looking unusually pale. "Captain, we need to talk," Owen said, not waiting for an invitation before stepping inside. "Join the club," Jack muttered, motioning for Owen to sit. "What's the problem?" "It's the Thalassan technology," Owen began, his voice tense. "I've been analyzing everything they've shown us, their medical advances, their genetics. At first I was amazed, but now I'm worried." "Worried about what?" Jack asked, though he had a feeling he already knew. "Their genetic manipulation is beyond anything we've ever seen," Owen said. "They've eradicated diseases, extended their lifespan, even enhanced their physical and mental abilities. But there's a price. Their population is controlled to the point where individuality barely exists. They're engineered for specific roles, specific functions. They're not like us, Captain. They're a product of design, not nature." Jack frowned. "And you think this could be a threat to us?" "Absolutely," Owen said, leaning forward. "If they see us as inferior, as flawed, they might decide to improve us the way they've improved themselves. Or worse, they could see us as a danger to their perfection and try to eliminate that danger." Jack's mind raced. This was worse than he had imagined. The Thalassans had the power to alter life at its most fundamental level, and they could easily turn that power against humanity. "We need to be very careful with what we share with them," Jack said, his voice firm. "For now, we play along. Keep learning what we can, but don't reveal too much. We need to protect ourselves." Owen nodded. clearly relieved that Jack understood the gravity of the situation. "I'll keep a lid on things, Captain. But we can't keep this up forever. Sooner or later, they're going to want more from us. More than we're willing to give." Jack stood up, his decision made. "Then we'll deal with that when the time comes. For now, let's focus on gathering as much information as we can. We need to understand the full extent of what we're dealing with." As Owen left, Jack returned to his desk, his mind spinning with possibilities. The Thalassans were not just another alien race. They were something entirely different, something that could change the course of human history. But whether that change would be for better or worse was still unknown. The only thing Jack knew for certain was that they were in deep, and there was no turning back now. He had to stay ahead of the game, keep his crew safe, and find a way to navigate this increasingly dangerous situation. And he had to do it all while keeping the Thalassans from realizing just how much he suspected. Because if they found out, there would be no escaping the consequences. Captain Jack Mercer felt the weight of the situation growing heavier with each passing day. The more he learned about the Thalassans, the more uneasy he became. Mark's discovery of the genetic facility had revealed a dark side to their seemingly utopian society, and Owen's concerns about their potential to manipulate humanity were impossible to ignore. As much as Jack wanted to trust Elara, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The Thalassans were too eager to learn about humanity, too curious about their weaknesses. It was becoming clear that this wasn't just an exchange of knowledge. It was a calculated effort to assess and possibly exploit humanity's vulnerabilities. One evening, as Jack was reviewing the latest reports in his quarters, the door slid open and Mark stepped inside, his expression grim. "Captain, we've got a problem," Mark said without preamble. Jack set down his tablet, his stomach tightening. "What now?" "One of our crew members, Lieutenant Parker, has been spending a lot of time with the Thalassans," Mark began. "At first I thought it was just part of the exchange program, but I've been watching him closely. He's been giving them more information than he's supposed to. Detailed schematics of the Endeavor, our weapon systems, even our communication protocols." Jack's heart sank. "Are you saying he's compromised?" Mark nodded. "Looks that way. He's been working with a group of Thalassans who aren't exactly friendly. They're the same ones I saw near the genetic facility. I think they've gotten to him." Jack's mind raced. If Parker had been turned, it meant that Thalassans were planning something. "We need to stop him before he can do any more damage. Where is he now?" "Last I saw, he was heading towards the main Thalassan complex," Mark said. "I think he's going to meet with them again." "Get a team together," Jack ordered, rising to his feet. "We're going after him, quietly. We can't let the Thalassans know we're onto them." Mark nodded and quickly left to gather the necessary personnel. Jack took a moment to steady himself before heading to the armory. He couldn't afford to let his emotions get in the way. This was a delicate situation, and one wrong move could trigger a conflict they weren't ready for. By the time Jack arrived at the shuttle bay, Mark had assembled a small team of trusted officers, including Lieutenant Eric Hayes and Dr. Owen Grayson. They were all armed, their expressions tense but determined. "What's the plan, Captain?" Eric asked, checking his weapon. "We're going to track Parker and see what he's up to," Jack explained. "If he's betraying us, we'll bring him in. But we need to do this quietly. No one else can know what's happening." The team boarded the shuttle, and Eric piloted them towards the Thalassan complex. The landscape of Zeta 5 passed by in a blur as they flew low over the trees, the moonlight casting long shadows across the ground. As they neared the complex, Eric slowed the shuttle to a hover, keeping them just above the treetops. The complex was a sprawling structure, its walls glowing softly in the darkness. Jack could see the entrance where Parker had likely gone in. "Set us down here," Jack instructed, pointing to a clearing just outside the complex. "We'll go the rest of the way on foot." The shuttle touched down silently, and the team disembarked, moving quickly and quietly through the underbrush. As they approached the entrance, Jack signaled for them to stop. "Mark, you and Eric cover the entrance," Jack whispered. "Owen, you're with me. We'll head inside and find Parker." Mark and Eric nodded, taking up positions on either side of the doorway, weapons at the ready. Jack and Owen slipped inside, the interior of the complex bathed in the same soft blue light as the rest of the Thalassan structures. They moved cautiously, following the sound of voices deeper into the building. Finally, they reached a large chamber where they found Parker speaking with a group of Thalassans. Jack recognized a few of them from previous meetings. They were high-ranking members of their society, ones who had shown particular interest in the Endeavor's technology. Jack and Owen crouched behind a low wall, listening to the conversation. "We'll have everything you need by tomorrow," Parker was saying. "The captain suspects nothing. The crew trusts me. They won't see it coming." One of the Thalassans, a stern-looking figure with a regal bearing, nodded approvingly. "You've done well, Lieutenant. Once we have the full schematics, we'll be able to neutralize their ship and prevent any retaliation." Jack's blood ran cold. The Thalassans were planning to disable the Endeavor, likely to prevent them from returning to Earth with the knowledge of what they had discovered. Owen glanced at Jack, his expression filled with concern. Jack knew they had to act now, before Parker could do any more damage. Before Jack could signal his team to move in, Alara suddenly entered the chamber. She looked surprised to see Parker there, but her expression quickly turned to one of suspicion. "Parker, what are you doing here?" Alara asked, her voice tense. Parker looked caught off guard. "I'm just ensuring everything is ready for the next exchange. You know, following orders." Alara's eyes narrowed. "I wasn't informed of this. Who gave you these orders?" The Thalassans with Parker exchanged uneasy glances. The tension in the room was palpable, and Jack could see that Alara was beginning to realize something was very wrong. "Parker, what have you done?" Alara asked, her voice rising. Parker hesitated, but before he could respond, one of the Thalassans moved towards Alara, clearly intending to silence her. Jack knew he couldn't wait any longer. "Now!" Jack shouted, leaping over the wall and charging into the chamber, weapon drawn. Owen followed close behind, and Mark and Eric burst through the entrance, catching the Thalassans by surprise. Parker reached for his weapon, but Jack was faster, disarming him with a swift strike. "Captain!" Alara gasped, clearly shocked by the sudden turn of events. "Parker, it's over," Jack said, keeping his weapon trained on him. "You've betrayed your crew, and you've put us all in danger." Parker's expression hardened. "You don't understand, Captain. The Thalassans are the future. They can offer us things we can't even imagine. Cures for diseases, advanced technology. I did this for humanity." "By selling us out?" Mark growled, stepping forward. "You're a traitor, Parker." Alara, looking between the humans and her own people, seemed torn. "Captain Mercer, what is happening?" "These Thalassans," Jack said, gesturing to the group with Parker, "were planning to disable our ship and prevent us from leaving this planet. They've been using Parker to gather information about us." Alara looked stricken. "This cannot be. We are a peaceful people. This is not our way." "It seems not everyone shares your ideals, Alara," Owen said grimly. "Some of your people see us as a threat, or maybe as an opportunity." The Thalassans with Parker, realizing their plan had been exposed, suddenly made a move to attack. But Jack's team was ready. A brief but intense firefight erupted, the human superior training quickly overwhelming the Thalassans. In the end, only one of the Thalassans remained alive, wounded but conscious. Parker, disarmed and defeated, slumped to the ground, his betrayal laid bare for all to see. Alara approached Jack, her expression a mix of sorrow and anger. "I did not know. I swear I did not know this was happening." "I believe you, Alara," Jack said, lowering his weapon. "But this changes everything. We can't trust your people if they're willing to resort to treachery." Alara nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "You have every right to be angry, Captain, but I beg you, do not judge all Thalassans by the actions of a few. Let me help you. Let me prove that we can still work together." Jack looked around at his team, at the fallen Thalassans, and finally at Alara. He knew the situation had spiraled out of control, but they still had a chance to salvage something from this disaster. "All right, Alara," Jack said after a long pause. "We'll give you that chance. But from now on, no more secrets. We work together, or not at all." Alara nodded, relief washing over her face. "Thank you, Captain. I will do everything in my power to make this right." Jack turned to Mark and the others. "Let's get Parker back to the ship. We've got a lot to sort out, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next." As they began to move out, Jack couldn't help but feel the weight of what had just happened. The fragile alliance with the Thalassans had been shattered, and the road ahead was more uncertain than ever. But they still had each other, and as long as they stayed united, there was a chance they could make it through this. They had to, because now, more than ever, the future of humanity depended on it. Captain Jack Mercer stood on the bridge of the Endeavour, his eyes fixed on the holographic display that dominated the center of the room. The image showed a rapidly escalating situation. Thalassen ships, sleek and deadly, were moving into formation above Zeta 5. The fragile peace that had existed between the humans and Thalassans was crumbling, and Jack knew they were on the brink of war. "Captain, the Thalassan fleet is taking aggressive positions," Lieutenant Eric Hayes reported, his voice tense. "They're powering up weapons." "How long do we have?" Jack asked, his tone calm but edged with urgency. "Not long, sir," Eric replied. "If they decide to fire, we're in trouble." "Get all systems online," Jack ordered. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers and bring weapons to full readiness." "Yes, Captain," Eric responded, his hands flying over the controls. As the crew scrambled to prepare for what seemed like an inevitable battle, Jack's mind raced through their options. They were outnumbered and outgunned, and with the Thalassans having superior technology, a direct confrontation would likely end in disaster. Sergeant Mark West entered the bridge, his face set in a grim expression. "The crew's ready, Captain. We've secured Parker in the brig, and we're on full alert. But I've got to say, we're in a tight spot here." "I know, Mark," Jack said, his voice heavy. "But we can't let them wipe us out. We need to buy time, maybe even find a way to turn this around." "Any ideas?" Mark asked, though his tone suggested he wasn't optimistic. Before Jack could respond, the door to the bridge slid open, and Alara entered, flanked by two of her guards. Her usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by a look of determination and urgency. "Captain Mercer," Alara said, her voice filled with tension, "you must listen to me. The Thalassan Council has lost control. The faction you uncovered has taken over, and they're planning to eliminate you and your crew. They believe humanity is a threat that must be neutralized." "Tell us something we don't know," Mark muttered under his breath. Jack ignored the comment and focused on Alara. "What do you suggest we do? We're outnumbered and they have the advantage." Alara took a step closer, her glowing eyes locking onto Jack's. "There's a way to stop them, but it's risky. The central command structure that controls their fleet is vulnerable. If you can disable it, the Thalassan ships will be paralyzed, giving you a chance to escape." "Where is this command structure?" Jack asked, a plan already beginning to form in his mind. "It's located deep within the main Thalassan complex on the planet's surface," Alara explained. "But it's heavily guarded. You'll need to move quickly and quietly if you hope to succeed." Mark's brow furrowed. "This sounds like a suicide mission, Captain." Jack nodded grimly. "It might be, but it's our best shot. If we don't stop them, we're finished." Alara stepped forward, her expression resolute. "I'll guide you. I know the layout of the complex, and I can help you avoid the worst of the defenses. But we need to move now." Jack turned to his crew. "Eric, you stay here and keep the ship ready for immediate takeoff. If we fail, I want you to get the crew off this planet no matter what." Eric nodded, his face pale but determined. "Understood, Captain." "Mark, Owen, you're with me and Alara," Jack continued. "We're going to take the shuttle down and disable that command structure." The small team quickly gathered their gear and headed to the shuttle bay. As they boarded the shuttle, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this mission might be his last. But he pushed the thought aside. There was no room for doubt now. Alara guided them through the atmosphere, the shuttle skimming just above the treetops to avoid detection. As they approached the Thalassan complex, the size and scale of it became clear. Massive towers of sleek metal, interconnected by glowing bridges and surrounded by dense forests. "We'll land here," Alara said, pointing to a clearing just outside the main entrance. "From there, it's a short distance to the command center. We'll need to move quickly once we're inside." The shuttle landed softly, and the team disembarked, their weapons ready. Jack led the way, Alara at his side as they made their way towards the entrance. Inside the complex was a maze of corridors and chambers, all bathed in the soft blue light that seemed to define Thalassan architecture. Alara moved confidently through the passages, her knowledge of the layout keeping them one step ahead of the patrols. "We're close," Alara whispered, as they reached a large door guarded by two Thalassan soldiers. "The command center is just beyond this door." Mark and Owen took positions on either side of the doorway, ready to take out the guards. Jack gave a silent nod, and the two men moved in perfect sync, dispatching the guards quickly and quietly. Alara moved to the door's control panel and quickly entered a sequence. The door slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with consoles and holographic displays. In the center of the room was a large structure, pulsing with light, The command node. That's it, Alara said, pointing to the node. Destroy that and their fleet will be crippled. Jack didn't waste any time. Mark, plant the charges. Owen, cover him. Mark moved swiftly to the command node, pulling out a set of explosive charges and placing them strategically around the structure. Owen kept watch, his weapon trained on the entrance. As Mark finished setting the charges, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. We've got company, Captain, Owen warned. Jack turned to Alara. Is there another way out? Alara shook her head. No, we'll have to fight our way back to the shuttle. Then we make a stand here, Jack decided. We hold them off until the charges are ready, then we run like hell. The first wave of Thalasan soldiers burst into the room, their weapons blazing. Jack and his team returned fire, using the consoles and machinery for cover. The room filled with the sound of energy blasts and the smell of burning metal. Mark glanced at the timer on the charges. 2 minutes, Captain. We just need to hold them off a little longer, Jack shouted, firing at an approaching soldier. The battle was intense, but the team held their ground, driven by the knowledge that this was their only chance. As the timer on the charges ticked down, the Thalasans pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming. 1 minute, Mark called out, his voice strained. Get ready to move, Jack ordered, his eyes fixed on the exit. The charges detonated with a deafening roar, the shockwave knocking the Thalasans off their feet. The command node exploded in a shower of sparks and debris, the lights in the room flickering as the complex's systems began to shut down. Now, Jack shouted, leading the charge towards the exit. The team raced through the corridors, Alara guiding them back to the shuttle. The complex was in chaos, with alarms blaring and Thalasans scrambling to respond to the explosion. But with their command structure disabled, the Thalasan forces were disorganized and less effective. The shuttle was waiting where they had left it, and they quickly boarded, with Eric already powering up the engines. Did you do it? Eric asked as they strapped in. It's done, Jack confirmed. Get us out of here. The shuttle lifted off, speeding through the atmosphere and back towards the Endeavor. As they ascended, Jack looked out the viewport and saw the Thalasan fleet drifting aimlessly, their coordination shattered. We've bought ourselves some time, Jack said, breathing a sigh of relief. Alara, sitting across from him, looked both relieved and saddened. You've crippled their ability to strike, but this isn't over, Captain. The faction in power will regroup. They will come after you again. We'll be ready, Jack replied. But for now, we need to get back to Earth and warn them about what we've discovered. Alara nodded. I will stay behind and try to restore order among my people. Perhaps there is still a chance for peace. As the shuttle docked with the Endeavor, Jack felt a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. They had survived the immediate threat, but the challenges ahead were still daunting. The Thalasans were far from defeated, and the knowledge they had gained on Zeta 5 would undoubtedly change the course of human history. But for now, they had won a small victory, and as long as they continued to fight for their survival, there was hope. Let's get home, Jack said, giving the order to set a course for Earth. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. The Endeavor's engines roared to life, and the ship surged forward, leaving Zeta 5 and its mysteries behind. As they entered hyperspace, Jack allowed himself a moment to reflect on what they had accomplished. The fight was far from over, but they had made it this far together. And that, at least, was something to hold on to as they faced whatever came next.